Backyard Science. My name is Marilyn. I work at the Marina branch at the Monterey County Free Libraries, and normally I do story time, but today, or this evening rather, I'm in my evening sky viewing gear because we are talking about our mysterious moon. We'll learn some lunar facts, learn how to track the phases of the moon, and maybe even try to make a sketch of it. The moon is the only place beyond Earth that humans have actually been to. But before Neil Armstrong made his giant leap for mankind on the moon in 1969, humans spent a lot of time looking at the moon, telling stories about it and incorporating it into their mythology. People looked at the dark parts of the moon and saw a face. Maybe you've heard of the man in the moon, and some people even thought the moon was made of cheese. Some astronomers in China even equated it to a silver ball with powder on it. If you look at this pea and this nickel, you get an idea of the relative size of the moon relative to the Earth. The moon is about a quarter of the Earth's diameter and about a 1/81st of its mass. The moon goes around the Earth approximately once a month, which is where that unit of time actually comes from. It is tidally locked to the Earth, which means that the same side of the moon is always facing the Earth as it goes around. In order to see the far side of the moon, you would have to actually go to space or look at a picture taken by a spacecraft. Contrary to popular belief and the titles of some music albums, the far side of the moon isn't actually dark. It does receive light from the sun. And why does the moon shine? We know that it's not actually a star like the sun, so it doesn't have its own internal light. It actually is lit by the reflected light of the sun. So when you're looking at the moon, you're actually seeing sunlight being reflected off of it. And the moon's rotation around the Earth is actually around the sun. As it goes around the Earth is where the different phases of the moon comes from as the sun lights up different parts of the moon, which we will get to in a little bit. You can actually do a demonstration to show the phases of the moon with household objects. You will want an uncovered lamp to act as the sun. In this case, your head will be the Earth, and you'll need a spherical object of some kind, whether it's a ball or like this lemon, to be your moon. So you will get your source of light or sun, and the first thing you'll do is you'll stand and put your moon between the light and the Earth, the sun and the Earth. And when you look at it, you'll see that the light is hitting the far side of it, but the side facing you is shadowed, and that is mimicking the new moon phase here on Earth, where we can't really see the moon because there is no light reflecting from the sun to show it to us. Then, if you keep rotating, keeping your source of light or sun in the same place, you will see that the sun hits parts of the moon, and that's what shows you the quarters and crescents that mimic what the moon does in our sky. So as you keep, if your source of light is here, if you keep going, you'll see the first quarter where it's only hitting half. Then you'll see, I'll rotate a little bit, so pretend your source of light is here at this point. If you raise it up a little bit, you will see the light is hitting the whole half of it, and that's the full moon. Rarely does the Earth get between the moon and sun, which would block it at the full moon phase, but when that happens, that creates a lunar eclipse. But for the most part, the rotation of the moon is a little bit above the straight middle of the Earth. And then you keep going around, and you will see the other quarter of it, and then you'll get back to the new moon phase with your moon between the Earth and the source of light. So that's a demonstration you can do at home to show the phases of the moon. For our activity this week, I thought we would try to track the phases of the moon. So I went out a few days ago and looked and found the moon in the sky and drew a picture of it relative to where I was standing in my yard. And you should go to the same place and the same time as a good scientist does to remove all factors that you can so that only one thing is changing, which in this case is the moon's movement, which is movement. So here is the first crescent on May 26th when I went out. Here is my house, and that is the western part of the sky. So this is when I look up to the west, this is what I see, and that's what I saw on that evening, and that's my drawing of the moon. Then I went out a day later, and the crescent had gotten a very little bigger. Then I went out a few days later, and it had moved straight ahead from where I was standing so that it was up in the southern sky, and it was almost half full. This was the 29th, and actually that is the first quarter of the moon, so it was almost exactly half lit by the sun. Then when I went out a few days later on on the 30th of May, the moon was almost totally full, and it was up in the southeastern part of the sky. And I tried to draw, you can see here on the right side of me is my house where it was before, and then it had moved over this way, and so it's almost totally full, and you can see some of the dark parts of the moon. So then last night, the moon, it was a clear night, and I broke out my binoculars to see if I could actually sketch the moon. Sketches like this are good if you can't get good pictures of something, which is important for scientists. And so here is my sketch that I made of the moon that I could see with my binoculars. So if you have binoculars, the moon is a really good thing to look at, and you can actually see quite a bit of it. So these dark parts are called Maria, which is Latin for seas, and the reason for that is because before people went to the moon, they thought the dark parts were actually oceans. And now we know that water can't exist on the surface of the moon. And then these white circles are craters. Now, those come from meteors hitting the surface of the moon. Now, the Earth has an atmosphere. If you've ever seen a shooting star, you know that we have an atmosphere, and that when meteors come towards Earth, they burn up in the atmosphere. But the moon doesn't have that, so that's why it gets hit by a lot more meteors than we do. And why some of them are one of them is on the south pole of the moon, and it's twice as deep as the Grand Canyon. So here are so these are all Maria, and then here are the craters. I tried to shade some of them, but the Maria were created with volcanic eruptions on the moon, and their soil has a higher concentration of iron, which means that they're darker, and that's why they don't reflect as much light and why they look darker than the rest of the moon. So there's my moon sketch, and I hope that if you are able to make one, you don't need binoculars to do it. You can look up right now. I'm looking up at the moon right now, and I can see it with my naked eye, and so you can too. And I hope that you will post your moon pictures in the comments. I mentioned earlier that the moon is the only place beyond Earth that humans have been. The first unmanned craft that landed on the moon were in 1966, sent by the then Soviet Union. And then, after a lot of trial and error, in 1969, on July 21st, the US sent the Apollo 11 mission up, and Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. And between then and 1972, there were several other moon missions, but 1972 is the last time that a human has walked on the moon. However, scientists are still studying the moon with rotating satellites and with some equipment that got left on the moon with those missions. And you can even, with the satellites, they can still take photographs of the footprints and tracks of the rovers that are on the moon's surface still. You can also do an experiment at your house to see the phases of the moon. So you can use just about any semi-spherical object. I have this lemon from our tree, and if you get a lamp, preferably an uncovered one, in a dim room, you can have your moon, and if you stand with the object between yourself and your source of light, which in this case is the sun, you will see that the near side of you is shadowed, and that is mimicking the new phase of the moon. If you rotate, you will see that the light hits different parts, and that shows you the phases of the moon. So I hope that you will do that at your house. This is a very simple experiment to do. And then when you get to the full phase, when you have your source of light, pretend the source of light is here. You will want to raise it up a little bit, because it's very rare that the Earth actually gets directly between the sun and the moon. That creates a lunar eclipse, but the actual orbit of the moon actually is a little bit above the straight middle of the Earth. So if you go up a little bit, you will see the light hitting the entire face of the object, and that is the full phase of the moon. And then if you keep turning, you will see your light source hit the other part, and that's the last quarter of the moon before it gets back around to the new one. So that is an experiment that you can do at home that shows you the phases of the moon. That concludes our Mysterious Moon episode this week. There are tons of other things to learn about the moon. Check out NASA's website or the library's encyclopedia subscription with World Book and Encyclopedia Britannica. There are lots of cool things to learn about our lovely lunar neighbor, and there's still lots of cool science going on around the moon. So take care, be safe, and have fun exploring. Bye.